Did they give anybody a headshot in the program?
Guess not.
Just the keynotes. Just the keynotes. I don't need one.
Stop saying and then I got red, all red, and then the light blue.
I think we'll go ahead and get started. Does everyone have Wi-Fi? If they need Wi-Fi, all that stuff as far as passwords and connected? Yes. We don't need it for this class.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying. Yeah, you don't need it. I just want to make sure that people got it if they are wanting it. If you do have trouble seeing the screen, and you would like to follow on your own screen, you can actually go down to this link here. It's bit.ly/sass-foc, and you can bring that up on your computer. And I think in theory it follows along automatically. It's been a while since I've tried that, but I'm pretty sure if you do that, then you'll actually see this up on your screen. And when I flip slides, it should flip slides on your screen. So if someone plans on doing that, let me know and we'll just test it real quick.
I have it up just because I saw the link.
Okay, so watch your screen and see if it changes, okay? Did it change?
Yep.
Sweet. Okay. Nice to know that still works. Okay, thank you all for coming to this session. Let's see, so I need to make sure I'm recording. I am recording both places. We're good, because I've gone through an entire session and not recorded and been very upset with myself. So just a little bit about me. My name's Andrew Koebbe. I am a development manager at the Stowers Institute for Medical Research, which is just right across, I don't know which way I'm facing, but it's right across Rock Hill. So the big fancy building you can see from here. I work primarily in PHP using Symfony and JavaScript using Next.js. In a former career or former job, I was doing Drupal full-time. So I still do Drupal on the side, primarily Drupal 7 because I don't have clients who want to upgrade yet, so I'm just going to keep them going. But I use Sass, the topic we're talking about, all the time. I've had many years of experience and I think pioneered it at my previous job, getting more and more people to use it there. So that's what we'll talk about today. As far as my interests and things you can ask me about, I'm a big fan of MST3K, which is Mystery Science Theater 3000, for those who don't know. Sous vide cooking. Has anyone done sous vide cooking before? Does anyone know what it is?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. It's more people than usual. So those who don't know, sous vide cooking is basically vacuum sealing food, primarily meat, and then you put it into a really tightly controlled water bath, at like chicken at like 143, and you cook that for like 2 hours, and it's super, super good. I actually have 10 pounds of brisket going right now. 12 pounds of brisket going right now for 48 hours.
In your hot tub?
And my hot tub, yeah. and what essentially is a hot tub, yes, but it's a smaller thing. So we've got a big neighborhood party that we're going to be doing brisket with, and I got a new flamethrower too, so I can sear it when it's done. Also, you can ask me about coding to save babies' butts. So that's an interesting, fun topic that I can get more in detail. But if those of you who are local may have heard of an organization, nonprofit called Happy Bottoms here in Kansas City, which is a diaper bank. It's the Kansas City area diaper bank. Diapers aren't covered by WIC or by any other government subsidy or entitlement. So this is a hole that Happy Bottoms fills, and I'm the primary developer for the inventory ordering and system for Happy Buttons. So, and we're open sourcing that app, and I could use some great help with that. So eventually it'll be on GitHub, and we'll open it up for other people to contribute, which is going to be great. And lastly, it's been a while since I've done this with marshmallow cannons. So I have this marshmallow cannon that I built out of PVC, where I charge up a big chamber, and then I can charge up a smaller chamber and shoot marshmallows out. It's a lot of fun. The kids love it. So that's enough about me. But can I have a quick show of hands of who has used Sass before? Okay, just a bit. That's fine. Okay, so it looks like a little over half have used Sass before. How many people feel like have used it quite a bit? Okay, got 2 people. Okay, so this may not be super informative to you, but anyway. But for the rest of you, this should be. This is going to be an introduction to Sass and a little bit about what frameworks are out there. We won't go too in depth on those because we don't have time. I have a love-hate relationship with CSS. I love CSS because you can do some pretty amazing things with it. You can make beautiful websites out of it without needing no JavaScript. But I hate CSS because it doesn't offer the same coding paradigms that I'm used to when I'm working in PHP or working in another language. But before I start bashing CSS, let's talk about. Oh, hang on, there's a bug right here. So let's talk about the history of CSS and the good things about it. So this is a screenshot of the Microsoft.com website from '98. Everything that's outlined in red is table cells. Okay, so this is how we did things back in the '90s. Tables for layouts, and I think so. Maybe that still happens a little bit now and then. So what I want to mention is that this site does actually use inline CSS, but that's there as like the old code is still there for backwards compatibility for older browsers. So when I show you the code for this, you'll see some inline CSS, but it's really just kind of there for future browsers and not the browsers at the time. So let's just look at the main navigation. So this top bar here. Okay, so we've got just pretty standard navigation up there. Here is the code for that navigation. I know this is going to be difficult to see in the back. That's not super important at this point, other than we have fonts tags all over. There are 15 font tags in here. There's also, this is all done in a table cell, and then we're using actual. Oh, thanks. We're using actual pipes for delimiters. So this is just basically a string of links with a bunch of font tags in there. So and again, there are some inline styles, but the font tags are basically covering that. But now we can do websites that look more like this once this decides to slow down. So now we've got websites that we can do this without any video, all doing this through CSS with animations and layers and all that kind of stuff. So this is why CSS is great, because we can do these things now. So a quick trivia break. Does anyone know what the first browser was to actually have any implementation, not complete, but any implementation of CSS? What browser and version? Anyone? Internet Explorer 3. Oh God. Does anyone know which browser had a complete implementation of CSS version 1? Internet Explorer 5 for Mac. If that doesn't blow your mind, nothing will. Because this is Microsoft we're talking about, who historically doesn't handle standards well, or they make their own standards, right? But yet they're the ones who actually did the first full implementation, and on Mac, which is just crazy. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the good things that CSS can do for us, let's talk about some of the things CSS does not do well, and may not do at all. The first thing is selector chains. So we are used to combining out selectors, like our classes, when we're building CSS. We can chain our selectors together to get more specific as we style elements. So, for example, we've got a section tag, and then we've got a paragraph within a section tag, and then we've got an anchor and a paragraph in a section, and then we've got the hover of that anchor within a paragraph in a section. So we've got a fair amount of things that are happening, and we're getting more and more and more specific. But we continually have to restate section, 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 P, 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 A, A, right? And we have to continue to do that. But what if we needed to decide, you know what, section is the wrong tag here, we should have been using a div. Well, now you got to go through here and change all of these sections to divs, right? And maybe you can find a replace, but that's really risky, right? So wouldn't it be really nice if we could do something like this, where we've got our section here, and then we just nest the more specific things inside it? That way, we just have to change this one section selector here, and everything else just falls into place. But CSS does not allow us to do that. We can't do nesting of styles in this way within the code. Extending selectors. So wouldn't it be really nice if we were able to, we had a message, okay? We had a message here, and we said, okay, we've got our basic message that we're going to show. It's just going to be like a banner. But then I want to tweak that a little bit for some other type of message. Maybe an error message. Maybe an informational message. Maybe a warning message. And all I really want to do is just change the background color. I want everything else to stay the same. I just want to change the background color. So what we can do with that is we can either just make another class called message error and copy all this stuff and then change what we need to. Or we can do a, what's that called? That's a group selector, right? Where we've got message and message error, and then we put all this stuff in there, and then we override just the thing we need to. Or we can do a compound selector, which means that there's a message class and an error class. And then the error class is the thing that will make the change for us. So these are ways of doing that, but wouldn't it be really nice if we could just say, hey, just extend what the previous class that I've created up here, and then just add these things onto it. So that would be really cool. Then we don't have to worry about trying to juggle all this stuff. We can just say, go grab something I've already defined, and then add this stuff onto it. Variables. So variables are a thing in CSS 3. But in my opinion, they're super, super clunky. To do variables, you have to first define a root block, and you have to then define your variable, and it has to start with a dash dash. Why it has to start with the dash dash, I don't know. But that's the specification. So that's just weird. And then if you want to use that variable, then you have to call a var function and then the variable name to actually use the variable. This is not how we're used to calling variables and using variables within code. We're usually used to using like $sign or something similar to that, depending on what language you're using. So it would be really nice to be able to use a $sign in typical variable notation that we're used to. Calculations. CSS 3 does allow for calculations. We can do some cool things with calculations. Again, it's a little clunky, but not terrible. So this is our calculation here. It's just a calc function, and then you can put in your math that you need to do. But keep in mind that nesting calculations isn't supported by all browsers. So you can't put a calculation within a calculation. And you also cannot do color math in every browser. So you can actually add colors together with this, but not all browsers support it. So it's not something we can really use at this point. I don't think any IE supports color math. So the one thing I do want to mention is that in CSS, the calc function has one distinct advantage over Sass, and that is that you can mix units of measure. So here we've got a percentage and we've got a pixel. You can do that with CSS calc, but you can't do that in Sass, especially with percentages. Okay, so keep that in mind. So that's one benefit. And lastly, functions and mixins. You can't really see this, but this is a water fountain going into a hose going down into a water tank for a, what do you call it? Water cooler. Yeah, thank you. So sometimes we want to be able to reuse components of our CSS, not necessarily with the way that we were doing extends, but we might want to do some things like for loops, or take in parameters and then allow that to generate some sort of CSS. So we don't have any kind of version of that within CSS. So these are the things that I really do not like about CSS. They don't jive well with me, and they make the CSS more difficult to deal with. So luckily, Sass has our back. So I want to get into a little bit of the history of Sass and what it is and what it isn't. So Sass is a precompiler for your CSS. Precompiler meaning you compile this before you actually put it on your web server. Okay? This doesn't get dynamically generated. There are ways to do that, but we're not going to cover that in here. So you compile while you're developing, and it generates CSS for you that the browser can use. It is a superset of CSS, meaning all of CSS can still be used within Sass. You don't have to forget everything and learn something completely new. Everything will still work. You can copy all of your CSS, put it into a Sass file, it still works. It was originally written in Ruby, but as of, I can't remember how long ago, maybe a year ago, maybe less than that, it was officially changed to only be released in Dart and in C. That technically doesn't matter to you all who are using it. It only really matters to the developers of Sass. But that's just to know that that's kind of what you're dealing with on the back end when you run it. There's definitely other implementations. There's a Node implementation. There's PHP. There's Java implementation. But that's just the engine to generate the CSS. The nice thing about the Dart one is that it's self-contained. You can just download the binary and run it on any OS. You just have to download the right one for the OS. So you can actually check that in with your code if you wanted to, so that everyone's using the same version of Dart. But you don't need any special support libraries for it. It allows for your easily organizing your code. So you can have multiple Sass files out there that then get compiled into one CSS file. So you can separate these things out, and you don't have to worry about the client's browser having to download 50 style sheets because that's the way you wanted to organize your code. This will compile it into one CSS for you. And lastly, it allows for rapid development of styles because you can reuse components between your projects. So maybe you've got a common set of mixins that you use for one project, but you realize, oh, I need to use those in another one. You can just copy that mixin file over and start using them right away. So now you've got an easier way of building things out faster. And the great thing about it is that it closely mimics the languages that we know and love: JavaScript, PHP, C, Java, what have you, with the way that it structures code, with nesting, with variables, with calculations. What Sass is not. It does not require any knowledge of any other language other than CSS and a few extra things at CSS, a few superset functions of that. So you don't need to know Dart, you don't need to know Ruby, you don't need to know any other language. Knowing Sass by itself is enough. It does not require a client-side interpreter, meaning you don't need anything special in the browser, you don't need any kind of special JavaScript library in the browser, you don't need any kind of special plugin for the browser for this to work. It compiles out regular CSS, the browser will understand it. So therefore it doesn't add any client-side overhead. It's not a framework. There are frameworks built on it, but Sass is not a framework. So if you are interested in a framework, there are lots of other ones. Bootstrap uses it, Foundation uses it, Bourbon Neat, which is a grid framework, Susie's a grid framework. There's lots of different frameworks that end up using it. There are probably frameworks that you use, like Bootstrap, that you didn't know were using Sass on the back end to build it out. So there are alternatives. There are other pre-compilers out there besides Sass. There's Stylus, there's Less, there's Myth, there's PostCSS, and there's a bunch of other ones. I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen around the web, is that Sass is the most used CSS pre-compiler at this time for what it does. Less was getting pretty close, but Sass is, I think, pretty much unseated Less. Less is very similar. Okay, so how do we install it? If you're on Mac and you use Homebrew, it's just as simple as grabbing the Sass package. If you're on Windows and you use Chocolate, which I didn't know was a thing until just recently, which I guess is the Windows equivalent of Brew, you can just install Sass. But if you don't use any of those, you can actually just get the binaries from the Dart version of Sass and just plop that binary in a directory and run it, and it works. You don't have to add anything else. Again, you could check it into your code base if you wanted to. So that's how we get it. It is a command line tool. So you type in Sass, you put the Sass file in it, then you say, here's the CSS file I want you to generate. So it's a very simple input-output type system. IDEs also have built-in Sass functionality. If you use PHP Storm, Sass is built in. So if you start a Sass file, and you're going to see a little pop-up message across the top in PHP Storm saying, "Hey, do you want to compile this?" And you can click yes, keep the CSS file compiled for me for this. So that's up to you. But you can also integrate this into things like into Gulp or into Webpack. All of that especially in the JavaScript building libraries, Sass can be part of that as well. Feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions. Okay, so let's talk about what's in here. What's in the Sass goodie box? So we've got two different types of syntaxes that you can use with Sass. There's SCSS, which frankly looks like CSS, right? And then there is Sass, which is a different format that looks more like Ruby and Python without semicolons and it uses indentation. Okay? For the most part, of all the projects that I've seen you using Sass, the vast majority use this because that's a low learning curve. Okay? That's what we'll be using today just to make it a lot more understandable. But if you're into that Python Ruby thing, then you might find this a little bit easier to use. So keep that in mind. But these are equivalent, and you can actually switch between them using the Sass compiler. You can say, hey, change this SCSS file to an SASS file, and it'll do that. All right, variables. So we can handle colors in variables. And you can see up here, hey, this looks pretty familiar. There's a $sign. We're using a colon to do assignment rather than an equal sign, because CSS uses colons for assignment. So we just can put in the variable name, and we can assign it a value. We can use the hex, we can use an RGBA, we can use an HSL. So those are all different ways of storing colors within a variable. We can handle units. So you can handle pixels, ems, rems, VH, V, whatever the other one is. There's another one. But any units will be handled in there. We can handle strings. Strings are pretty straightforward. You can do quotes, or you can do a full string like this, like we're seeing for like font families, where sometimes things are quoted, but it will take this whole thing as a string. We can also do booleans. And we can do maps. This would be similar to an associative array or an object, where you've got where you have properties and then a value, like a key value type system. Okay? So all of these things we're going to use in this next example of how to use these in your code. So here are the variables that we talked about earlier, and here is how we can use them. So I'm going to go through each one of these up here. So we had this cool class that's equal to way cool, and up here at the top we have something called interpolation, and hopefully some of you may understand, have heard of interpolation. Basically it means take whatever is in here and add it in here as if it's actually code. Okay, so that means that I'm going to take way cool, and that's going to be the actual, if I were writing this out in CSS, it would be heading.waycool right there. We've got our color, our background color in there, our height. We have an if statement and using our boolean. Okay, so our our operators within Sass usually start with an @ symbol. So if, for, those types of things, will start with an @ symbol. So I can do an if this boolean is true, then go ahead and put in this font with that font family string, which is what we have over here. So this is one thing that we can't really do in CSS, which is do if statements. Now, keep in mind that this is happening before the browser sees it. Okay, the browser's not doing this conditional here. You're doing this in code. And the way that this can work out is if you have a configuration file for your Sass. Okay, so let's say, do I want a sidebar, yes or no? Okay, And so you can say yes in your code so that, okay, well now my Sass is going to compile with a sidebar. Or it won't compile with the sidebar, and therefore things can be adjusted. It's not that the browser goes and says, hey, is there some condition that I need to change my CSS in some way? The browser's not doing that. This is a way to take this Sass, take it to another project, and say, oh, in this project we're not using the sidebar, I'm going to set this to false. That's a way to reuse the code. There's other reasons to use ifs too, and I think I'll show you an example of when that comes up, especially in for loops. That can come in really handy. And then we have our map, or our like associative array here, and we have to use a map get function here. So we don't get to use like the associative array brackets notation. They're using a method here to say get style from the header variable, and so it's going to shove in italics. So here's the output. Okay, we've got our way cool from our string. We've got our color. We've got our height. Our font is true because we set this to true, and then we've got our font style italics. So that's how that compiles down. So this is just an example of how we can use the variables. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay, nesting. So that example I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could nest things? Well, we can do that now. So here we've got an article, and in the article we've got an H1, and then we also have a link in there as well. And that link has a hover pseudo class. So now we can do this, and it outputs this, which is what we're used to seeing within CSS with our chain of selectors. One thing you'll notice here is this ampersand. Does anyone know what the ampersand is?
It's attaching it.
Right. This is called a parent selector. Right. Well, yeah, but you're right. You're attaching it to whatever you're in. So if we were just to put :hover on here, then it would take that as a space right here. So it'd be article A and then space :hover, which is not a thing in CSS. So you have to attach the :hover to the A. So that ampersand is called a parent selector, which means take whatever you've got up here and just shove this on the end of it. You're appending onto the end of your parent. You can actually, I could very well put a space here, and that would then put a space down here. Not that we would do that in this case, but you can still do that. You can also put things in front of that parent selector. I don't remember if I've got an example, but I can show you when we do a live demo. You can put a different class in front of this, which would be almost like adding another class up here, making like basically shoving a class in front of your chain. Well, but I'll show that when we do an example. Math operations. So we've got simple math operations, which is just combining units together. We can grab a variable, we can divide. So we can, again, we have to keep the same units of measure when we're doing calculations on 2 units of measure. But we can use just integers and do division and addition. We can say 22 pixels plus 10. That will give us 33 pixels. We don't have to actually put on the px on the end. But we do need to make sure that that division is put into parentheses, because the slash actually has a meaning within CSS. And I think that's primarily for font size. You can say what font size and the line height using the slash. So you got to put that in parentheses. Color math. Color math is really fun. It's really fun because you can actually input, and I'll show you this, you can input one color into your CSS and build out the entire color palette for a website without only giving one color. It's really fun to do. So we can do addition of color. We can do multiplication of color, and there are great color functions built in to Sass, like darken, lighten. You can do hue, you can do saturation, you can do lightness. You can find out what the lightness of a color is, and then trigger on should this text be white or black based on the lightness of this color, which is something that I know I've seen a lot. Is that you put in black text and then they say, oh, we're going to change this color, and now the black text you can't even read because the color's been changed. Then you've got math functions like rounding, florid, seal, all that kind of stuff is available as well. All right, extending selectors. So we talked a little bit about extending selectors by reusing the actual previous class you've defined and saying, go ahead and inject all these things into this class and then add this on. The way this compiles out is not actually taking all these classes and shoving them in here. It's actually using a group. It's taking this class and shoving it up here, and then adding the overrides here. So that's how it's actually handling this. But from a mental standpoint, how I see it is I'm actually just going to shove all these things in here. It's a good thing to remember that any overrides you put in there, you need to put underneath it, because CSS handles it top down. So if you've got a color at the top and a color at the bottom, that color at the bottom is going to win out. So just make sure your overrides are below your extent. There may be reasons you want to put it above. Most of the time you want to put it below. Okay. You can also have classes that actually don't exist. They're considered like abstract classes, where this class may not ever get used. So you can put a percent sign in front of it, and this class itself won't get built out. So what we would see is this go away, and then this would be by itself, or any other classes that use that abstract selector would end up doing it. So there are certain cases where you've got some common things you're using as far as style is concerned, but you don't want that definition of your style to be a class itself. Mixins. Mixins can be equated to functions. Things that take in input and then alter what outputs. So we can make let's say we make a link color mixin. We're going to take in a base color, we're going to take in a border width, and we're going to have a default value of that border width. Okay, so we put in @mixin to define a mixin called link color. And then this is what is going to be the output down here. We're going to have a color, and it's going to be whatever we put in for our base color. And we're going to have a hover. Remember, we're using our parent attributes. So whatever this mixin is called in our case an A, it's going to grab that A and stick it on there. And then we can say, you know what, we want the hover to be a 20% darker version of our color, and we want the border on the bottom to be the complement color. So when you hover over, it's going to darken, and the underline is going to change to the complement of the font color. So, and this is how it renders out. So this allows us to reuse this however many times we want to, with whatever color we want, and border width if we want to specify that. And it'll generate out the CSS for that. So this is where we can reuse a lot of our standard functionality and reuse it many times with different variables. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, plugins and libraries. So that covers kind of the basics of what you can do in Sass. There's a lot more you can do that I won't have time to get into because I want to show some live demos so you can see it in practice. But the plugins and the libraries that you can use, this list is probably a little dated, but I do know that these projects still exist. So there's a mixin library. There was a mixin library called Compass, and I used to use Compass all the time, but Compass is no more because it was based on Ruby, which was what Sass was based on. But now that Sass is no longer Ruby, Compass really isn't a thing anymore. It still exists, so you can use it, but you have to use the Ruby implementation for it. But these libraries are agnostic to which compiler you use. So Bourbon, Foundation. Foundation, we know, probably many of us know, is a similar framework to Bootstrap, but it does actually have several Sass mixins that you can use from there. Then there's grid frameworks. Suzy is one that I've used a lot in the past, which is a really nice grid framework. And Neat is a very similar one as well. There's several other ones too. Again, this is just a sampling. So I've used Suzy a lot to say, hey, this div is going to take up 2 of 6 grid slots, and that's just a mixin you put in there, and it handles all the calculations to know how wide to make that. And then lastly, some other ones which are nice. Breakpoint is a really good one to handle your media queries. So if you're handling things like mobile design, Breakpoint's a really good one because you can actually name a specific breakpoint. Say, this is going to be mobile landscape. And then you can just say, within, like nesting, you can say, okay, here's my image. And then inside you can say, at Breakpoint Mobile, do this instead. So rather than having to come out and do a whole other media block for this, paragraph or whatever, you can actually nest in how you want to handle that within the actual selector itself. So it keeps everything together, which is really nice. And then Sassy Buttons is a fun button library to make flat, rounded, shiny, glossy. There's different versions of buttons to use. But again, this is like maybe 0.1% of what's out there for the Sass plugins. Okay, let's do some live coding because that never goes wrong. So let's look at just some examples here. That's a Fresh Prince. I didn't know that they were doing that. It's pretty fun that we both choose Fresh Prince ones. So I'm going to show you a couple examples from a website called Sass Meister, which is very similar to CodePen, where you can put in code snippets and see what it generates. It's just an easy way for me to have some examples already lined out. So let's go in and bring this up, and I might need to zoom in a little bit. Is that visible enough? Hopefully that's visible enough. So what we have here is our Sass on one side, and we've got our CSS, the compiled CSS on the other side. So what we have here is that message example that I showed before with the extending. This is just showing how extends work. So again, we've got we have our CSS and our compiled CSS, and this should generate something. There we go. So here we're able to say, hey, in my error message, just do the same thing we're doing with message, but add a red color with a border of 3 pixels. Okay, and if I were to come up here and say, you know what, I want my padding more, we can do that, and then it'll affect both of them. Make sense? Okay. All right. Next one we have is a color palette. So this is honestly one of my favorite things to do in here. So we've got a primary color defined, our variable, which is a color, right? I don't even know what this color is, to be honest, but it looks like it's going to be somewhat of a blue color, a bluish reddish color. And then we've got a secondary color, and what I'm doing is just saying, you know what, on the color wheel, just go 1/3 of the way around. And then our tertiary color, go 1/3 of the way the other way from our primary color. And then down here, I'm making just some swatches, just 100 by 100 squares, right? And then I'm saying, okay, the background color for one of them, make the primary color. The second one, desaturate it a little bit to make it lighter, make a brighter version, do a secondary, do a tertiary, and do a gradient of a few of those things. So what that ends up looking like is this. So we've got a darker version, a lighter version, or I'm sorry, a desaturated version, a lighter version, and then our complement. So I can come up here, somebody give me a color, even if it's
red.
Even if it's a word, we can do that too. So we get our red, our green, and our blue because that's the way the color wheel works, and our gradients populate. So this is a really cool way of theming if you want to do that. So what I usually do when I'm working on a website is I'll put the variables within a variable file so that I know, okay, these are my, based upon the mock that the mock-up that I get, the creative, I will put those colors in so then I can always reference those. And in case they decide to change one of those, I just change it one spot and everything just compiles out really nicely. So that's some color work. And then let's look at a mixin example here. So I have a Glassify mixin that I've created here. And what this does is it takes any element and it makes it look glassy. Okay. This was back when, or what version of Windows, or no, it was Mac. It was when Mac OS 10 came out, and all the buttons were this like really cool shiny glass, and it was like, oh, we got to use these. So this is from way back then. So here's what we're doing. We got our mixin we're defining called Glassify, and we're passing in a color. So what color is this thing going to be? So I'm going to make a brighter version of the color and store that away in a variable, and this does scope. Okay, so anything you define Any variable you define within a mixin, within a class, is only good within that mixin and class. If you want to do globals, you have to put it way out in the root space. Okay, so then what we do here is we say, if our sorry, these monitors are backwards for me. If the lightness of the color that was passed in is less than 25 out of 100, so 0 being black, 100 being white, if you were to grayscale the color, basically, where does this fall? If it is less than 25, then make the bright 25% lighter. This works out for black, because if we put black in there as the color, the actual glass effect wouldn't work very well. So if it's at a certain darkness, you want to bump the brightness up a little more. And then if the lightness is less than 50, then we want to make our font color white. Okay, otherwise we're not going to be able to see our font color. And then we go down here and we do all the magic. So we're going to do a linear gradient. We're going to put a little top border, bottom border, a border radius, and then we're going to add a shadow. And all of these are using the variables that we have up there for color, right? And then down here, so we built our mixin, but we haven't used it yet. So there wouldn't be any CSS coming out of this until we actually use the mixin. So right here I'm going to call include, classify, and then give it a color. And then I just do whatever else I want to do with my, the size and the padding and the margin and all that stuff with that. So if I run this, then we'll see we've got a shiny button there. Or a shiny div, effectively. A shiny rounded div is what that is. So we can see here that it decided to use black. If we actually did do a darker color, let's say we did like a gray, it changed to white because it knew that color that we gave it was too dark to put black text on, because I just found the threshold at 25 seemed about right to where you want to do that. I think we might even be able to use an RGBA in here. I haven't actually tried that. So we might be able to do like 24, 100, 200, and 0.8. Does that work? I think it might actually work. Let's see if we mess with this. Yeah, it does work. So, it's a color. Color is a color, and you can use it however you want to. So, we might want to check for transparency in our code to say, well, if it's below this transparency, we'll probably want to go black on it. Yeah. So anyway, so that's how you can use mixins. And now I have this classify that I can use on anything I want, which makes it a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to use. Are there questions on this? On how we've used these? Okay. So we're getting a little close. I do want to entertain some questions in a little bit, but I do want to show a site that I worked on recently. I was given, I wonder if I could find the creative. I probably could. I won't, because that's going to take me too long. I was given some creative that they wanted to use, which was basically circles. They wanted circles all over the website, and on those circles, they wanted circles around it. And then they wanted those circles staggered, overlapping each other, with circles around it, but not where those other circles intersected. So it became this really weird problem. And so I saw this, I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because I could do this with JavaScript and like check if it's overlapping, and then if it is, then move it down a little bit, see if it's overlapping. I could do this all in JavaScript, but I knew that it was going to take a lot of computation on the browser side and probably slow it down quite a bit. And I was checking on Midwest Dev Chat. If you're not on that, it's a Slack channel. It's a lot of fun, but a lot of developers are on that. So I put the question out there, like, what would you guys do in this situation? And someone just said, you could probably just do it all in CSS if you wanted to. And I was like, okay, maybe I could, but that's going to be a lot of classes that I have to generate to say, okay, I have a list of circles here, 5 long, they're overlapping, staggered, and then I might have 1 circle around this one, I might have 2, I might have 3, so I realized that I could do a big for loop to generate all of the different permutations. So this is what it ended up looking like, and they ended up changing the creative on me. So I didn't get to use all of it, but oops. So this is the website. I'll zoom in a little bit here. So this is the website here, and if you go into one of these areas, this is what they were looking for. So these circles staggered over one another. The original creator had circles, I call them satellites, around this. And I had to avoid this area and this area. So I knew that if this were a 4-long list of circles, and I was on the second one, I only had this and that to work with. And so I programmed that all out within for loops for Sass. So an example of where that actually ended up being used was on the team. So at max, I told them you can only have 12 on here, because otherwise it's going to get way too crowded. So this one happens to have 11, or no, this one has maybe 10, I don't know what to count, and this one has like one more, I think. So you can see how it evenly spaces those out. So the way that that looks in the code is, well, look at this one right here. Can I zoom in on this part? Yeah. Okay. So you can see here that I have, okay, child 1 of 11, 3, 4, 5. So I didn't have to make these classes. I just did a for loop to tell me to make all these classes. I said, hey, for loop, go make me permutations of there just being one satellite on here, all the way up to 12. So I just did the for loop for that. And then it went, and it figured out, okay, I need to put it up here, and these are all absolutely positioned, and then they're rotated. So they rotate this way, and then they rotate themselves back to keep them aligned. They go around. So it's doing all of that rotational math. And if you look down here at this rotate, I didn't have to worry about that. This is a rotation of 131.40909 degrees. I didn't have to worry about that. I built the math in to do that. So Sass allowed me to then say, within the CMS, hey, there are 4 items on here. So go ahead and list out each one of those as a different class when you're putting the circles on there. So this was a really useful case for me to use a mixin and some for loops to be able to get me this. And it loads super fast, and I don't have to worry about them putting in a number I wasn't expecting, as long as they keep it below 12. So they could put in 5. And within the CMS, all they have to do is remove one of those, and everything gets taken care of, because the CMS is then putting out the classes. So does that make sense? This took me a while to do. It would have taken me longer, and I would have shot myself in the foot had I done it by hand. Because if I had to make a change to one of these, I'd have to make a change to all of them. So.
It's 11:03, by the way.
Huh?
It's 11:03.
Thanks. Okay, are there any questions?
What was the Slack chat you said it was?
Midwest Dev Chat.
Midwest Dev Chat?
So on Slack, Midwest devchat.slack.com. Is that right? Yeah, midwestdevchat.slack.com. It is an invitation. It's an invitation-only group, but Jennifer, who spoke today, is one of the moderators of that one, as well as a few other people. So you can put me down as a reference. Usually when you request, hey, who referred you? Put me down, and you'll be good. But that's really good because they cover anything development-wise, no matter what language, whatever. And there's a lot of fun to be had there too. So, any other questions? Okay. Yes.
In my workflow, Andrew, it'd be more likely that I would be using like a Sass subtheme, and I would make a subtheme of it. Mm-hmm. In my subtheme, is the way I work just going to be like the same way I work with a regular subtheme, a CSS subtheme?
Yeah, it would be. You can still use whatever CSS is part of your base theme, right? And then you can just add your Sass on top of it. Or if that base theme uses Sass, sometimes there's ways to actually, like, you can import that in,
right? And
then make your modifications off of it. But as far as themes are concerned, if you do an override of a style sheet, then you would just if it's Sass already, then just keep it Sass, and then just compile from there, and it should work. Yeah. All right. If you have any other questions, definitely hunt me down, or we can do a birds of a feather type thing for Sass. Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.